Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Town of Auburn Planning Board meeting of this Tuesday, January 9th, 2018, now called to order at approximately 7 p.m. This meeting is being recorded and broadcasted live by Local Access Programming. Is there anyone here in the audience tonight that is recording tonight's meeting? There being none, please rise and join us in a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, I would like to remind the audience, applicants, town administration, and each of the planning board members to please refrain from asking questions in regards to all matters discussed this evening without first being granted my consent. First item on the agenda this evening is discussion items. 9 Elm Street, request for a waiver for a two-family conversion in the general industrial zone. Is there an applicant?
Just come right up to the table, have a seat.
Oh, okay.
Could you state your name and address, please?
My name's Catherine Rennis, 9 Elm Street.
Adam Rennis, 9 Elm Street.
Briefly describe the project.
We have currently a single-family home, and we're adding an addition for my family that is square footage. It's turning into a two-family. So that's what we would like, permission to do.
So it's a single family and you want to convert it to a two-family?
Yes, the square footage exceeds the 700 square foot limit for an in-law apartment, and so that's why we needed to convert it.
And you got a special permit from the
The
zoning board?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
So, for procedure, special permits granted by the zoning board December 21st, I believe. Anything granted special permit or variance, site plan is to follow. Usually we see this in a lot of our business districts. Since this residence lies in a business district, that's why we're seeing it here. In the past, we don't typically see residences too often at the planning board. From what I understand with this plan, it's a request for waivers of all the site plan design requirements. They just submitted the plan that they submitted to ZBA, I imagine.
Yes.
And the only question I had on it, if I may, Mr. Chairman, was driveway. Is it the same driveway? You're adding any other driveway?
It's the same driveway. There's going to be only one more vehicle, and currently it has the space for the two vehicles.
No. That's the only question I have, Mr. Chairman. Other than that, I have no objection to this.
Any questions, Scott?
No questions, no objections.
Jason?
No.
Myself? Do I have a motion to approve the waiver? Oh, anyone in the audience? I'm sorry.
It's not a public hearing. So you don't have to.
Did you want to speak then? Oh, okay. No, being none. Have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
It is approved. Good luck.
Thank you.
All right,
Good evening. Thank you.
Next discussion item is 289 Packagug Street, a waiver request, accessory apartment on a hammerhead lot. The applicant. Would you just state your name and address?
Yes, I'm Leonard King. I live at 289 Packagug Street.
Can you just describe the project, please?
The project we're doing is, I have a single parent daughter living with us now, and then I have another single parent daughter she has to move out of her apartment the end of February, and she has no place to live, so we figured that instead of her moving from apartment to apartment, she can move into this space, this accessory addition that we're going to build.
Do you plan to put an addition on the existing house, which
Yes.
is on, or has been on, a hammerhead lot
Yes,
that was approved much earlier?
11 years ago.
How much land do they have, Matt,
There's over 60,000 square feet,
on the hammerhead?
and it's in I believe it's in an RA, so.
Is it a sketch, because you didn't
Yep.
give us the packets on
Yep.
there.
Okay. I may add some things, Mr. Chairman. This project also received a special permit approval from the zoning board recently.
Yes.
So again, subsequent site plan review follows procedurally. The applicant has requested waivers similar to the application prior to this. And I have the same question I just asked before. Is there same driveway, no new driveway, right?
Same driveway, yeah. Driveway is 300 feet long.
When I look at it, it's, you know, a square little addition off the back,
Yes.
tight within that circle and stuff like. Scott, any questions? Wendy? Jason? All set. Do I have a motion to approve the request for waiver?
Motion to approve the request for waiver?
Do I have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
It is approved. Good luck.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Public hearings. 701, the applicant being Masad Family LLC requesting modification of site plan approval under section 9.4.1 of the Auburn zoning bylaws for parking, landscaping, and site layout reconfiguration on property located at 54 Faith Ave. This had been continued from February 13th, continued to February 13th, 2018 for applicant. Do I have a motion that we continue it to February 13th, 2018?
Make that motion?
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
It is a vote. 702, public hearing. The applicant is Auburn Planning Board, request to hold a public hearing to discuss potential rescission of a definitive subdivision approval in accordance with MGL Chapter 41 and 81W and Auburn Subdivision Rules and Regulations, Section 6.3, for a subdivision known as Packagug Farms at 71 Curtis Street. It's been requested that this be continued also to February 13th, 2018. Do we have a motion?
Make a motion? Make that motion?
Have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
It is a vote. 7:03 PM applicant, Seaboard Solar Holdings LLC requesting site plan approvals under section 9.4.1 of the Auburn zoning bylaws for the development of a 5.0 megawatt solar photovoltaic installation on 5 separate parcels on property located at 476 and 500 Leicester Street. We have a request to continue this to February 13th, 2018. Do you have a motion?
Make the motion.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
It is a vote. 7:05 PM, applicant Sweb Development USA LLC requesting site plan approval under section 9.4.1 of the Auburn zoning bylaws for the development of a 6 megawatt photovoltaic solar installation located at 430 Rochdale Street. There's a request to continue this to January 23rd, 2018. Have a motion?
Make the motion to continue.
Have a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
It is a vote.
Mr. Chairman, Mayor, call for motion to move up item signatures, covenant the reserve at Ashworth Hill.
Do I have a motion to move up the plan revision 771 Ashworth Hill, reserve at Ashworth Hill?
Make that motion?
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
It is a vote.
All right. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. The draft covenant for the project, the reserve at Ashworth Hill off Laker Street, the covenant has been reviewed by town council and they are satisfied with the language presented. I have the draft that has been signed by the applicant and this would require the board's signatures this evening. Prior to endorsing the plan, the covenant has to be accepted by a vote, by a motion. And after such motion, I will,
Why don't we pass it out and let
Do a
them
notary.
take a quick look?
I believe it should have been on the e-packet. I don't know if it made it. Okay, but if anyone has questions, happy to pass it
Do you
around.
see it?
Yes.
You see it, Wendy?
No.
Would have been the web version of the packet.
Oh, yeah,
Snowstorm slowed me down a lot. So.
understood.
Actually, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I want to read out one part of it out loud, because it's the one thing
Why
that's
don't you read
different. Sure, most of it is boilerplate, but the one piece I'm going to read out is item 11, because we had a previous covenant in place for this project, and then there was a modification. So I asked them to include the following language, that this covenant replaces and supersedes a certain Form I covenant by Albert Blaker LLC in the Town of Auburn Planning Board that was dated June 13th, 2017. Recorded with the Worcester Registry of Deeds, book and page outlined, and by execution and recording thereof. Planning Board of the Town of Auburn hereby releases, rescinds, and terminates the original Form I covenant, which shall be of no further force or effect upon recording thereof. So this one will replace the previous. And
Town council's good.
yes, the Town Council is satisfied with that. This, the one other note is, the original covenant we did gave them 5 years to complete the road work. We know there's a lot of ledge, a lot of work that's involved. And this covenant also has the same amount of time, a 5-year span. If the board is okay with that.
You all right with that, Scott?
Yeah, there's no phasing in this, right? It's just,
Through the chair, the phasing is road work only for now. They can do their other improvements to the other roadways that they mentioned, but there won't be any house lots or anything until this road reaches binder course, after which time they would apply for a performance guarantee and post a bond before we release any lots for house construction. So, if anything, that's the phasing. So road, bond, then house.
then each, all lots will be released at once and be,
That's up to us at that time. So we
You
can
want to
decide.
date it
Yeah, we can do that if the board's willing to vote.
tonight? Right, does everyone want a chance to look at it, or are you okay with it?
Okay. Town council's, got it.
Do we have a motion to approve the covenant?
I'll make a motion to approve the Form I covenant.
Do we have a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, it is a vote.
Okay, I just need to swear everyone in, so you can please hold your right hand. I do solemnly swear that you understand that you know what you're signing and that you do so under your own free will.
Yes, I do.
Thank you. So,
Dated in January, I mean...
what bank is that? See, that's where I messed up. I can't say that's a local bank.
That's true.
Take care of that.
That was good.
And the license to use it. Yeah. Yeah.
There you go, that's what, yeah, good points.
You run 6, yeah, I mean.
You gotta do this.
Yeah, I'll just refer one.
So who does this?
Anything else on this? No, we still got 5 minutes or something.
Yes, I do have one other item to move up. Thank you. And, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I just want to Call for a motion to move a member discussion item number 1, plan revision 771 Southbridge Street.
Make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
It is approved.
Thank you.
Plan revision 771 Southbridge Street.
Let's see it.
This is the, it's ARA Auburn Health LLC is a dialysis center at the former Outback over at 771
Oh, okay.
Southbridge
Yep,
Street.
Yep,
This applicant came to us at our last meeting in December, and
yeah.
we granted waivers on site plan approval, however, with the understanding that the proposed generator would not be located in an area that would affect emergency vehicles. So what has happened is the generator has been relocated, as well as the dumpster that was closer to the back of the building, and they have been relocated closer to the other 4 dumpsters, and the generator is the large item right next to it. This way, this was a recommendation from the fire captain, and he is satisfied with the changes to this plan. So unless the board has any opposition, you just do unless you have any questions, just a roll call vote of acceptance, and we can move on.
We just need a roll call.
So you have, I apologize, Mr. Chairman, I'm missing a piece. So there are 2 options for the generator here. And if the board's willing to choose one, you can choose one. You have option 1, which is closer to this side of the building. It's closer to the former takeout area for Outback. And option 2 is closer to the dumpster.
Oh, we've got like 2. Scott?
Without the applicant here, I mean, I'm impartial about it too, if they're both approved by the fire captain.
You can take that position, that's fine. You do it to the best interest of the fire captain, you can do that too.
The fire
Yeah,
captain
make
is
the
okay with
decision.
either one?
And tell them to think about the location of the house, first house going up Appleton Road.
Sure.
I just thought it might be, which one would be further away from them.
Yeah, but if the board thinks you can put that in a recommendation, that's fine.
I'd like to see a recommendation that the fire captain include in his decision the quietest area or distance from that first house going up Appleton Road.
That's a good point. Does this butt where the one next
Because,
to the
well, when-
dumpsters, is that a butt?
Option
property?
1 is more out, I'm not sure if that lines up with the house or the other one does, so is it Steve Anderson?
Yes.
So if we can put that in the motion,
That's more back
Mhm.
to the dealership.
Oh, right, the car dealership is right behind that, yeah.
We have a motion to defer and let the fire captain select the location.
Make a motion to.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
It is a vote.
Thank you. Good.
We have a 7:20 public hearing. The applicant is I.Y. Merson, requesting site plan approval under section 9.4 of the Auburn zoning bylaws for the operation of a spa on property located at 518 Washington Street. Now, why don't you show the location? Yeah.
Yeah.
What is it in here?
This is across from the phone.
It's on Route 20.
Oh, the house lot with the down.
So I just need a motion to open here.
Across from like, with Frozen
Patrick's.
places.
Patrick's.
Patrick's.
Make a motion to open the hearing.
Have a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Did you tell us what you'd like to do?
Yeah, let's speak for a little bit.
Sure, if you don't mind introducing yourself first for the record.
Pardon?
Just introduce yourself first for the
Henry
record.
Proco. She plans on opening up a foot and body massage at the foot and body rub place there. That's the way terminology told me. And if she does well there, she wants to go into expanding into nails, into hair, into property there.
We can't hear.
Yes, can you speak up a little so that the
We're the
audience...
abutters, number 12. We can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. She plans on opening up as a body and foot body rub spa, is what the terminology is, spa. And she expects to do well there. She wants to expand into doing nails and hair there too, as a whole, one building as a whole, and stuff like that.
So that would-
Go ahead, Monty.
Through the chair, that building that shows as Rockdale Auto Sales is no longer an auto sales? And that's the,
No, it's no longer.
okay.
How many parking spaces do you have there? Probably...
There was 17, and we
Does
took
it-
out 3 because it's not necessary. She
Okay.
doesn't need that much parking.
And did that 17 included where the cars for sale were, the inventory?
There's 3 in the back, there's 7 in the front, and there's an additional 3. It used to be 6, and it could be made 6 if it was necessary.
But currently you've got it at, what, 15?
Right.
So, just looking at it, parking.
I'm not holding the plan so you can see on the screen.
This GI,
No, this is just a PDF.
highway business. Oh, it says-
Yeah, it's a highway business district, yes. So, I believe Mr. LaRusso, the property owner, is alluding to,
Thank you.
the original plan had 6 parallel here that was almost stackable, and now there's only 3 proposed there, and you were able to squeeze another one out of one of the other areas. I believe that's how it worked. So there won't be, I guess, 6 stackable cars over there because it's no longer a dealership handling inventory. So otherwise, the existing impervious surface isn't being changed. There's no modification to that. There's no modification to the footprint of the building. Otherwise, this came in originally as a request for waivers. However, they came in soon enough, so we figured the public hearing is appropriate, given the close proximity to an abutter. So, it is a combined business and dwelling. It's already permitted and approved that way.
It's in
There's a
highway
resident
business.
that lives there currently.
That's it.
Um,
So residents live there too, right?
There's someone who lives there.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's 2 places for them.
And they have 2 spots in the back for parking.
Plus the 15 or with the 15?
And so that makes the overall 13 total spaces for the new use.
Highway business district.
Yes, sir.
Scott? Wendy?
Is that a shared driveway with the house in back?
I can answer that. Through the chair, it's just one structure. It's a shared driveway, but it's in a business district, so it's allowed. And it's pre-existing non-conforming. So since there's no changes to the footprint or the impervious, it's about right.
And does it share the driveway with the house in the back? That was my question.
The house in the back is on a different parcel.
Okay.
This one?
And it has their own driveway and,
That comes,
Yeah.
yeah, I believe that comes in off of Pole Street.
Yeah, after Diane Ave.
Diane Ave, excuse me, thank you.
Jason?
What's that?
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak?
So we're the abutters. I have no problem with it. Wish you the best of luck.
Thank you, thank you.
Just name and address.
Can you have your name and address for the minutes?
Mike and Michelle Schillinger, SCHILLINGER, 12 Diane Ave.
Anyone else from the audience?
Chairman, can I ask just a couple other questions? I see some landscaping on here. Is that existing landscaping or are those proposed? It looks like some
All existing.
existing, okay.
Existing, yeah.
Thank you. Okay. That's the only question I have then.
Okay.
We're also working with the state on the side in the front. We're going to go within the bylaws of the side.
Do we have a motion to close the hearing?
A motion to close the hearing?
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, it is a vote. Good luck.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Standard conditions, Mr. Chairman.
Standard conditions apply.
Thank you. Start this one. Right there.
Yeah.
Give them- give them a minute. You might trip on.
Watching the minute here. Give him a minute.
Oh. Might have to move it to the, comes to the, that's
We've set the TV up in the other room for overflow. If people need to go in there,
it. We may all move in there.
I'll set it up.
Which I love.
We have a 7:25 PM applicant, public hearing, CBS Corporation requesting a modification of a site plan under section 9.4 of the Auburn zoning bylaws for the relocation of a freestanding sign on property located at 676 Southbridge Street. Do we have a motion to open the public hearing?
Make the motion?
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, it is a vote.
Hi,
The applicant,
I am, yeah.
you state your name and...
For the record, my name is Heather Dudko, 27 Old Meeting House Road in Auburn, representing National Sign and CBS. The application before the board tonight is to remove the existing freestanding sign at the Goulding Street corner of Route 12 and relocate it to the driveway entrance on Route 12.
So right before the driveway
Correct.
enters, if you were heading...
Correct, yes. We did apply for a wall sign, which has been approved and already has been installed. And in regard to the ground sign, we were asked by Mr. Moody to come before the board for a site plan modification to move the location of the sign, and also we needed to get DOT approval, which CBS has received. So in the packet is a copy of the denial and also a copy of the DOT permit. So that is a picture of where they'd like to have the new location for the sign. The sign would be, let me just look at my notes, I'm sorry. It does meet the sign bylaw. At 24 square foot is the CBS panel. Overall height, 15 foot. And the side setback and front setback will meet code. The front setback is 10 foot and the side setback is 10.3.
Was any other reason for moving it? Just because cars were going
Yeah.
up Goulding Drive?
Yep, that's.
And they're not
that's-
able to get in?
That's exactly the reason they want to move it, and we do have a statement from CBS attesting to that. I do have some additional information. So that was their main concern, is that especially coming off the Pike and traveling up Route 12, people take a right onto Goulding thinking that's the entrance, and then they have to go up to Midstate and make a U-turn. So this is, they felt, a more appropriate place for the sign.
I have no concern.
Scott?
No, it's gonna be even exiting, it's an exit only, and
Correct.
people would go
That's
around the
correct.
rotary, and
And try to go in the
Yeah,
exit. They go in the
yeah,
exit all the
makes
time.
And it's high enough that it shouldn't block the sight distance to your left either.
Correct, yeah.
Wendy? Jason?
Looks great.
Is there any comment from the audience? There being none, do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Make the motion.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
It is a vote. Do we have a motion to accept the request for the relocation of a freestanding sign on property located at 676 Southbridge Street?
I'll make the motion to accept the request.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
It is a vote. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Standard conditions, Mr. Chairman.
Standard conditions.
You know,
Or should I stop there? I'll stay.
You can start it now. 7:35.
7:35.
We are 2 minutes short, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Would you like to vote on minutes?
yes. Sure. Love to.
Should be 2 sets. 2 sets of minutes, Mr. Chairman, from November 28th, 2017, as well as our Light Street meeting
12.
on December 12th.
Make the motion to approve the minutes from November 28th.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It is a vote. Meetings of 12/12/17.
And unfortunately, we can't vote on that one, as Jason and Wendy were both absent. So we'll table the December 12th.
Meeting.
And what do we need? We need
About 30 seconds.
Touch them with You guys must
I know. 46 seconds.
We watched the video, it was flawless.
Is it still doing this?
Gets shot every time John does something about manhole covers.
Sure.
I'm gonna get him over there and found your hat.
There you
If
go.
I could find one.
That would be hilarious. I bet you put it on eBay.
I hope he's not watching this, but I'm definitely
We
getting
have a 7:35 public hearing. The applicant is 176 Auburn Street LLC, requesting a modification of a site plan under section 9.4 of the Auburn zoning bylaw for additional parking on property located at 176 Auburn Street. At this time, I will recuse myself as chairman for a personal reason, and Jason will take over.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have to open the meeting?
I'll just ask if the applicant would like to proceed with only 3.
There are only 3 of us, so you need a unanimous. Would you like to proceed?
Yes, sir.
Take his chances.
Motion
Make a
open.
motion to open, can I have a motion to open the meeting, please?
Motion open?
Whatever.
I'll second.
Thank you. Go ahead.
All those-
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, good evening. Todd Broder from Fletcher Tilton here on behalf of the applicant, 176 Auburn Street LLC. The property's been utilized as a dental office for as long as I can remember, but recently seen an expansion in the business and is having a little trouble providing enough parking on site. Has worked a little bit with some of the neighboring businesses, and that has worked okay, but really they need to control their own parking on site. There was an issue maybe 6 months ago or so with parking in landscape areas and things of that nature, and it's something that the property owner wants to remedy. the town, Caleb has asked to be looked at. So what we came up with for a proposal is adding 10 spaces on the rear of the property, which would be employee spaces, and they'd be tandem. So if they're fully compliant with the size requirements of parking spaces in the town, but they'd be in a tandem fashion. And those would be, employee parking. Generally, those folks are there for the day. The thought is it would alleviate the parking crunch, and while there are some potential options to put parking in the front of the building by eating up some of the landscape areas and whatnot, it really has a nice kind of look to it now, and the thought was to try to keep that look intact and swing the parking around to the rear where there's already a number of parking spaces. So I think right now, excuse me, there are 17 existing spaces, and this would add an additional 10 to bring the total to 27. As far as, there's no other real site work involved to the rest of the site, I should say. There's obviously site work involved with putting the spaces in. The spaces pitch back towards the site, and there's a catch basin in the rear on the right-hand side, which would still serve to manage stormwater. So there's not really a big change or impact there. Not an engineer, but I play one on TV sometimes, and Pat couldn't be here tonight. He got stuck out in Sturbridge, so he did tell me it's a 1.5 slope kind of coming back towards the building, so that the water any water back there should make its way back to the catch basin area. That's about it from my end.
Matt, any comments from the town?
Not this time. I'm curious about it and member comments first.
I'd be interested to hear what some of the voters have to say about it.
Is there any public comment on this? Yes, sir. Name and address, please.
Hi, John Manning Jr. I'm an abutter to the rear of the parking lot. That chain link fence there that separates us now is the south border of my backyard. And I don't have any particular reasons to want to quash this. But what we'd be seeking to do to add into the plan would be to secure some kind of a privacy fence. A couple of concerns I have is, one, there's probably at the near end of that, it's a bit of an angle, the fence to my yard. It's not a square. Cutting into the existing lawn behind the present lot would bring part of that right up around the border of that fence. I'm concerned that water runoff will still, even though it may be pitched slightly toward the facility, will still be an issue with salt runoff in the back when there could be plowing issues. I want to make sure this drainage is good and adequate. We're losing a certain amount of grassland between the lot and my property, and of course, just for the sake of sort of neighborhood, it would be nice to be able to reduce some of the view into that with some nice synthetic fence, nylon fencing or something like that, like a 6-foot privacy fence. That's the concern that I would like to propose.
And Todd, you said there was catch basins in the back already.
There's a catch basin as you're looking at the building from Auburn Street on the right-hand side, about, call it in the middle of the existing parking lot. Yeah, Matt's got a
So
circle
that
there.
little square is?
Yes.
That's the only catch basin?
In the rear, there's a catch basin in the front as well in the drive area there.
Oh, yeah.
But just to address, Mr. Manning?
Yes.
The applicant has no problem putting up, a vinyl fence where that, the chain link fence isn't exactly on the property line, but they're happy to stick with that location for the fence and put up a 6-foot-high vinyl fence for privacy purposes. That's no problem.
Through the chair?
Yes.
Where is the snow storage on the?
Where is it now?
Where is it proposed?
They use the edges of the driveways and the edges of the parking, so they kind of just scrape it to the side.
So it'll be scraped further towards the abutter in the back.
Right, so right now, the spaces are actually slightly oversized. They're 9 by 19, I believe, so, excuse me. A lot. Right, so there'll be an additional 18 feet of pavement in that area. It's still offset on the property line by at least, the smallest distance is 11.76 feet to the property line, and it actually increases as you get towards the left-hand side. So there's a decent amount of room there still that's grass. Excuse me. So, you know, the thought is with the paving and the pitch on that, it would take any of that of the snow that's on the pavement area anyway, and direct it back towards the catch basin. And undoubtedly, if snow gets piled up in the rear, there's obviously a melt and some travel of that snow, but it does that right now. Just has a little less grass to travel over under this scenario.
Yes, sir.
Yep, Joe Morrissey, represent my mom, 174 Robert Street. Going to be, again, don't have a problem with the proposal, but if they're going to be putting the plastic fencing in the back, we'd like it to run alongside. I believe there's a chain link fence that starts about halfway from the point of the house to the back towards Mr. Manning's property, basically following the same chain link fence if they're going to be putting a 6-foot fence up there to have a continuous and neighborhood place. That's my only comment.
Yes, ma'am?
Lauren Barrett at 4 Renard Drive, and I would just like to ditto that. We've got the same concerns from the street going down, and we'd like the fence to be continued all the way around the property.
So it's not there now?
Yeah, the fence basically starts where that arrow is, about where you have just at the corner of that, my mom's property has that shed. Yeah, basically right from the corner of 176 and go back to the,
When it comes down, just
yes, right angle.
yeah, it just kind of goes a horseshoe across back half of the wall.
Starting from that point there, back towards Mr. Manning's property, and then continuing across, correct? Yeah.
It comes down again, according to the plan.
I don't think it's overly unreasonable, although that's the side we're not doing any work on.
Correct.
There's no change there that it really doesn't justify, I think, a change for it. It's not a reasonable request as long as we're doing it. And I think in my opinion that would be the back I get because we're actually getting closer and impacting over there. In my opinion, just thinking out loud, if that's something you and the butter want to talk to, I'm not. I'll leave it up to my fellow board members here. But for me, I'm more like a situation when we're impacting that area specifically, then we have to address it. But again, I mean, you can have your opinion on that. And
Through the chair, Matt, is there any concern with the increase in the impervious surface at all? Does that meet all of the...
No, the lot's over the percentage anyways. I don't think I didn't see it as a problem.
And the snow storage is not a problem at all, just pushed off to the sides?
It's up to the board. I mean, in my opinion, I'd prefer it was in the northwestern corner of the lot, if that is the northern corner of the lot, just because the property line kind of pinches to an 11-foot point, and I see the snow storage pushing in front. I mean, that's a pretty long area for snow. You need a formidable amount of snow to push it on the other property. Other than that, I don't really see issues with that. So long as it is pitched towards the catch basins and it's collecting the water,
Yeah.
no problems. I assume there'd be a curb, bituminous concrete.
I'm not sure what is there now, but certainly in the rear, yes. So we didn't have an intention to replace the fence, all around the property. Certainly, we thought the rear area made sense. I mean, that seems to be the most impacted area.
It would be awful nice for neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
It would be a nice gesture.
What I would say is I'll certainly let the property owner know that it was an expressed desire to do that. I mean, obviously they've spent some good money on the property, so Not suggesting they won't do it, but not having them sitting here right next to me, I'd hate to make that promise to you.
Is there any, through the chair, is there any, they're removing 2 pretty nice birch trees there? Are they going to be replacing any of the landscaping? These, what are these little dots here, you know?
I think the only 2 that are impacted are the birch trees that you mentioned.
So the ones that looks
Are
like
they gonna,
pines.
yeah, so if they put up the fence, they wouldn't
They were
really need to.
thinking of doing just the fence
A lot
or
of the-
fence or shielding with arborvitae or something. But I mean, if it were me, I'd want the fence versus a row of arborvitae.
Yeah.
Through the chair. Any idea of the chain link fence, how old it is? Is it all rusted over? Is it in good shape? I figured I'd ask some of the abutters if they know.
They probably know better than I mean, I've been by. It's actually, you know, I think they just made stuff better back in the day. It looks like it's in decent shape, but it's not new by any stretch.
Through the chair, if any of the butters comments on the fence, its condition, holes, anything like that?
He's right, it's old. Now it's an old chain link fence, so.
It's about 4 or 5 feet high, 4 feet high, thereabouts, and if you're going to be replacing that, put something with style on there and run it to the back edge of the property and along the back.
So just to be clear, we're not seeking the westerly border to be fenced, just the north and the east. That, yes, that 90 degree there. Not necessarily the far.
I can elaborate if I may. Is there anyone here representing 178? I understand that house is not in the greatest condition. I don't know if anyone here owns that property. If someone was here, they might be asking. Okay. Just curious. Mr. Chairman, I, based on all of our feedback, I can understand the board's reasoning for the vinyl fence across the back. The board wanted to put that in a recommendation, and then a soft recommendation for the applicant to consider complete placement of the chain link, but that's along the lines if they want to, but I think the board, if you're feeling that way, certainly across the back where the pavement's being pushed closer to the lot line.
Yes,
That
ma'am.
would be my opinion.
Sorry, I just have some requests from the other neighbors who couldn't be there. I don't know if you want to take this into consideration as you're moving forward.
She's due name and address?
She did.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
So what I've received, Mr. Chairman, is signatures, 8 signatures for request to replace all of the existing chain link fence, ensure the property, there's a privacy fence around the parking lot. Residents, Renaud Drive, 4, 5, 6, 7, 5, and 174 Auburn Street, most of whom are here right now. So now, other than the fence, if anyone else has any other comments.
Any other comments? So how do we make this motion?
I have one other question for the board. So with stackable cars, is there anyone here that works at the building?
No.
Okay, all right. Just operationally, you see, I've never seen this before in town, so it's certainly unique. I understand that employees will be there longer, but so operationally, it's not necessarily a site plan thing, but just for operations, emergencies, lunch breaks, and there's a patient behind you and you can't get out, like, it's gonna be a problem that they're gonna have to deal with, but as a planner in Auburn, I just hadn't seen this sort of layout before. It's not like it's illegal or anything, it's certainly something that you can try to pursue at your own risk as the applicant. But I could see some operational challenges that they're gonna have to deal with. So,
Through the chair, it certainly would make sense for the employees to stack their cars, you
Yeah.
know, so that if they have to move them around, the employees,
Yeah.
and then everybody else back, but
sure.
whatever, that's their
Yeah.
damage if you
Yeah.
right?
Just wanted to raise it down
Yeah.
in case it hadn't been thought of. So. But that's all I had.
So we need some kind of motion. Obviously, it seems we're accepting the plan, it's just determining on the fence.
The fence.
How far around you want to go.
So motion to close first unless there's other comment.
Any other comment from the town? May I have a motion to close the meeting?
Motion to close the hearing.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
So I'd make a motion to, and I do understand and sympathize with the abutters' concerns, but as you had said, I don't want to give a ruling that's outside of our impact area here. So I'd make a motion to approve with a condition that a vinyl fence be put on the north side of the property with an advisement to the property owner that they at least look at replacing the chain link fence
In its entirety.
in its entirety.
With standard conditions.
With
Standard conditions.
The property is actually going to change on that side too, because it's going back further, not just along there, but along the edge as well. So I think at a minimum, from where the chain link fence runs now to the corner of that property, should also be made vinyl fence at a minimum, because there is impact there as well in that corner.
Northern fence, eastern fence.
Right. Eastern, yeah. That would be my feeling on that, because that is going to change.
So that'd be the entirety of the chain link.
There's still another western fence that is.
We're not
Okay.
talking about the western.
What's the applicant's feeling?
I understand, the desire to make the complete change. I don't think that side is impacted by the plan that's in front of you. We're pushing further back towards the butter in the rear, and that very much makes sense to do something there. We're removing some vegetation on the, what side are we on here? On the easterly side, we're pushing back, and that's really the only impact there. There's some vegetation in that area which is noted, which provides some screening from these spaces that are going in. So, and this isn't meant to be a redo of the entire site, so I guess I'd push back a little on you and say, I'm not sure that the scope of the project really triggers the need to treat any of the other areas of the site.
But it is along that side as well,
Right here.
right there, yeah. So make the corner. It's going to change traffic, there's going to be increase.
Well, no, that's not true, because what's happening on site will still happen on
What are they doing,
site.
parking in the front? On
The
the
parking,
lawn?
they're parking, elsewhere right now,
Mhm.
some of the employees, and but there's probably the same number of trips to the site, now that there will be tomorrow, with this change, when this change happens. It's not, there's not an expansion of the building or of the practice at this
No,
point at the
no.
location.
So you affirm, obviously, he needs a unanimous, so obviously, I would imagine the applicant wants approval on this, so it's,
So, just to read back, Scott's motion was for the northern fence and for the applicant to consider
right, which I
the
agree
eastern
with,
fence.
but obviously with a full,
Right.
we need three of us, we don't want someone.
Yeah, and it doesn't have a second yet.
Yeah.
It's just site plan. I'm not looking for, I don't have a special permit
Okay.
request on the table.
I get it. Be a good neighbor.
And to be honest, if Dr. Betty was here, I'd turn to him and ask him and suggest that it probably makes some sense, but he's not here. So what we discussed with him was, because we had received notification of the concern from Mr. Manning, and that seemed to make sense. So the impact there led us to the conclusion that the fence made good sense in that area. But we didn't talk about any impact on either side, what that might mean.
Between the two of you.
Staring.
Or either that or you gotta upgrade yours.
No. I just, even if any of the butters were here as an applicant themselves, they wouldn't want an overreaching decision. It's just-
Well, again, it is pushing back on that corner too, but,
It does.
and while there's a change being made,
Yeah, and that's something we strictly want to limit. There's always a need to pile on when a business wants to, in a business area.
Sure.
This is a business area too.
Yep.
This isn't a business it's a residential area, but the zoning's completely correct here.
Yeah.
It may not be helpful, but I have a few
this picture.
shots from the property there. They're what I printed off.
Does it include the fencing?
This picture, which I can hand to you now, shows the right-hand side of the
I
property.
know what old chain link looks like.
Yeah, yep.
Look at
It's
it.
not color, so it's kind of is what it is. And you can see in the rear where the parking spaces are intended. There is vegetation back there. And the parking spaces are offset from that property line beyond the required setback.
Are they?
Yes. I believe the setback is 10 feet now? 10-foot parking setback, and doesn't show the exact dimension on there, but they appear to be 13, 14 feet off.
No tree removal.
Not in that area, no.
All right, I'll second Scott's motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That's a vote. It's a vote.
It's a vote.
Thank you.
Motion for a 5-minute recess.
Make a motion for a 5-minute recess?
Second?
Aye.
5-minute recess. It's a 5-minute recess.
See how many people are out there.
Can I have a motion to come out of recess?
Make that motion?
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Do I have a motion to move to the selectmen's meeting room?
Make that motion?
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We have a 7:40 PM applicant, Central One Federal Credit Union, requesting site plan approval under section 9.4 of the Auburn zoning bylaws for the development of a new member call center facility with new parking and landscaping on property at 20 to 30 Elmwood Street. Do I have a motion to open the public hearing?
Make that motion?
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, the hearing is open. The applicant, state your name and...
Absolutely. Mr. Chairman, my name is Brian Beaton. I'm the attorney for the applicant, and with me here this evening is Greg O'Connor, the project architect, James Tatro, the project engineer, and we also have several individuals from Central One that I'll ask to introduce themselves.
Dave Kaiser, AVP Retail Service. Bill Hamilton, Director of Facilities.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, if we could get business cards or at least names for the minutes before you leave, that'd be great. Thank you.
Mr. Beaton, are you from, did you say the law firm that you're from?
I'm actually from my own law firm.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Great. So thank you for having us this evening. We're here tonight as part of the site plan approval process. In addition to that, this is for the project site located at 20 and 30 Elmwood Street. We're also here requesting 3 waivers, which you have the authority under section 11.9 to grant. Those are from section 11.53A and B regarding interior landscaping requirements. And the reason is, which we'll get into in more detail in a bit, is due to the unique shape of the lot and also the topography. So we'll again go into greater detail as to what project overview and also what the intent is for landscaping and parking as well. As you likely know, we did appear before the ZBA several weeks ago requesting 3 variances related to setbacks, which were granted by the Zoning Board of Appeals. And prior to that, we had an abutters meeting at the branch facility, which is located adjacent to where this proposed facility is planned to be located. We know there's a lot of questions. There were several issues, many issues from different abutters and neighbors, and I know many of them are here tonight. So we'll again try to cover as much information as we can in our presentation, touch on as many of the issues and questions that were raised as well for your benefit, and sort of move through systematically with an overview of the proposed project and site layout. One quick question, one point rather, with respect to the proposed use. Member call center, we want to just make sure we're clear as to what the proposed use. It's not going to be a call center in the traditional type of use that you would imagine a call center is for. This is strictly for the Central One operation itself. It is intended only for their employees. It is not something that will be open to the public. Where they're having customers from their branch location on a regular ongoing basis coming into the facility itself. It's for employees, it is for the operation of Central One only, and it is not a call center in the type of solicitation mode. It's more to provide back office services for existing Central One customers. Regarding the shape of the lot and the topography, as you can see, it's a rather unusually shaped lot. As we pointed out again during the ZBA hearing, it is the shape of this lot that is driving, and also some of the soil conditions and drainage issues that the site lends itself to, that our engineer is going to go into greater depth about, that is driving some of the site design itself. I know there were questions raised regarding access, which again we're going to go into detail as to why the design is being proposed the way it is. And regarding drainage, there's actually going to be a net decrease in the amount of stormwater leaving the site. As you know, there is an existing house located on the property now, and the proposed building is actually located closer to Southbridge Street than the existing house as well. There's every effort made to kind of move the proposed building away from the existing house, where the footprint of the existing house right now. With that, I think what I'd like to do is turn it over to our project engineer, who will go into greater detail as to the site design itself, and then have any questions answered regarding that.
Mr. Chairman, my name is James Tatro. I work for Thompson Listen Associates, here representing Central One, and I'm going to try and restrain myself. I usually speak without a microphone, and I'm pointing at the board all the time as I'm speaking, so it's going to take a little self-restraint to hold back and just stay here. But the property in question again is 20 and 30 Elmwood Street. Extends from just to the side of the existing ATM that was recently constructed for Central One to the existing ATM that was recently constructed for Central One to the existing ATM that was recently constructed for Central One to the Okay. To the intersection of Elmwood Street and Southbridge Street. As Attorney Beaton said, it's a very unusually shaped parcel, and it's extremely long and not very deep, which was the subject of, or the reason for us asking for a variance from setbacks from the ZBA, which were granted. The access to the site, as you see on the board on the left, you see the building, which is about 6,700 square feet on the extreme left end of the board. And you see the parking area proposed in gray, extending, that's actually towards the north, towards the intersection of Elmwood and Southbridge Street. You see areas indicated in green, which are areas that are going to be landscaped. Okay. In the course of the construction along the fringe of the parking area. You see there are 2 access points proposed. One is right off of Elmwood Street, just as after it's come off of Southbridge Street. The other is near the proposed building. And this layout was worked out in consultation with the Fire Captain Anderson, representing the fire department at a development coordinating group meeting. And what we propose, again, for this building, two floors, and, excuse me, 3 floors, including a partial basement, 6,700 and change square feet footprint, are 97 parking spaces, all meeting the standards for Auburn of 9 by 18.5. And a parking aisle, again, one-way access in here, 24 feet wide, 24 feet wide all the way up here. And as you approach the building, it gets to 34 feet wide to allow for a fire truck to be able to turn and make its turn and get out, to Elmwood Street. All of this area, all of the building, all of this parking area, all the runoff from that, all of it is to be captured by the drainage system and sent to infiltration over here at the north end of the proposed development. All of it. And that's how we're satisfying both the extremely difficult to deal with Mass DOT folks and dealing with the fact that, without getting too much of an inside baseball thing in regard to drainage, you have a hydrosoil group A soil as identified as on your site. If you change that vegetative cover in that to parking, you're essentially changing from 0 runoff to all runoff when you change from hydrosoil group A soils vegetative cover to a paved surface. So the way we're dealing with that is we're capturing all of the roof runoff, all of the paved surface runoff, and sending it into infiltration at the north end of the site. We did soil tests back in January of last year, I think it was now, and we did them at several points through the site, and by the end over here where I'm indicating with the pointer, we finally got to the really good sandy soils that were expected to be on the site from the maps. So we are using those soils that we have that are excellent on site for that. I just want to point out quickly that the proposed building, if you look at, I know the Auburn zoning bylaw doesn't have a specific requirement for lot coverage, but the proposed building at 6,700 and change square feet versus the 68,116 square foot lot, the proposed building is 9.9% lot coverage. And I know, again, the Auburn zoning bylaw doesn't specifically have a requirement. If you look at any of the area towns, Shrewsbury, Millbury, Grafton, all of them, that easily meets their requirement, just as a little bit of a reference in regard to that. The open space on site, again, all the areas shown here to be landscaped that are in green. Also areas off the end here at the corner and in a few other spots that aren't to be touched. Those open space areas total 41% of the site. And again, there's not a specific requirement in the Auburn zoning bylaw, but if you look at the zoning bylaw of any of the area towns, that meets their requirements. So it's not an unusual proposal as far as the density of development for the area of the site. It would meet those the requirements of any of the neighboring towns that have specific requirements for those parameters. As far as the sites, other utilities, we did a water flow test and found adequate flow in the in hydrants in Elmwood Street. We are going to connect to the main in Elmwood Street. There's the existing house is right in front of where the proposed building is, and there's an existing sewer connection to Southbridge Street. We're going to utilize that connection. I want to point out just quickly that the grades through here, no grade exceeds 5%. And in the area of the handicap spaces, we're utilizing an under 2% grade, which is what is required under the Massachusetts Architectural Access Board. And we have more than the minimum number of HC or handicap spaces here. If under the Auburn zoning bylaw, we would only be required to have 66 parking spaces to serve this area of office space. Again, we're proposing 97. And the reason, excuse me, the reason we're proposing 97 is that Central One is trying to build this with an eye towards future growth. They don't expect to be using barely half those spaces initially with what they would, with the facilities, the personnel they would move to this property, but they want to be able to accommodate future growth. At their existing branch in Shrewsbury, they had an idea that the size of the branch would accommodate so many years of growth, and they ended up actually pretty much using up all their space. And so, yes, this facility as proposed and the parking spaces as proposed are in excess of what they're going to need initially, but again, it's an attempt to accommodate what will happen in the future. I think I just want to point out a couple other quick items. One of the big topics of discussion in front of the ZBA was the intersection of Elmwood Street and Southbridge Street. We had a discussion with Sergeant LaFlash of the Auburn Police Department, and we asked him specifically what is the accident history of that intersection. He said he looked at the data in their computer system, and that for the last 3 years they have record of 3 accidents at that site. And I don't have any frame of reference myself for whether that's high or low, and asked him, is that a high, medium, low accident rate? What is that? And he said it's actually very low for the traffic on Southbridge Street. So I'm not telling anyone that their perception of whether they like or don't like the intersection of Southbridge Street and Elmwood Street is wrong, but the fact is, from statistics, it's not a high accident rate intersection. I'm sure there's other things I wanted to say. I always run through others, but I think I'll turn it over to the project architect, Greg O'Connor, and he'll explain to you about the building.
Thank you, James. Mr. Chairman and members of the board, what I'd like to do is just quickly run through the functions and uses of the building interior, and then just a little brief rundown on why the building looks the way it does. As James started to mention, this building is designed for basically employees only. We have operations people, call center people that will be moving to this building. Initially, we're looking at about 40 people max that will move into this building. You'll have people fielding calls from members. You'll have people processing mortgages and other loans. That's the type of work that will be going on here. The employees will be arriving and leaving at kind of a staggered shift type of operation. The hours of this building are basically going to be from 7 in the morning till about 6:30 or 7 at night, Monday through Friday, and some Saturday morning hours. You have employees arriving in the morning anywhere from like 7 to 9, leaving in the afternoon from about 3 o'clock until about 6:30, 7 o'clock at night. You also have some people that work in the call center that are part-time employees. They either work mornings or afternoons. So we don't have the situation where folks are punching a clock and everybody's coming in at 7, everybody's going out at 3, so it kind of lessens the traffic load on the street. Now, once these people get into the building, the way this building is laid out is we have 2 levels basically above the ground on Elmwood Street, keeping the low side of the building on Elmwood Street, staying within the height limitations in the bylaws. And as the building moves closer to Southbridge Street, we have almost 3 levels out of the ground when you get over to Southbridge Street because of the change in grade. Within the building itself, you enter the building on what would be the middle level of the building. That middle level and the top level would be office space, traditional office space. The bottom level of the building would have some meeting space for the credit union and would also have storage space. The credit union is required to store a fair amount of records and things for periods of times, and that is presently stored off-site, and they would like to consolidate that here And it would actually help because some of the people that are processing these various loans and applications and things, they may have to actually access some of these documents. So having that on site could be a plus for them. And that's pretty much the interior of the building. It's fairly simple. The exterior of the building, we are trying to kind of carry the branding from the branch and the other facilities that Central One has over onto this building. You can see the color scheme is going to be similar to what's on the branch. Materials are going to be similar, and we've got kind of the roof cap detail, which is similar to the branch. So it's all about trying to make this one sort of kind of harmonious element, so to speak, where all the building it matches, and try to make this look like one complex. And then the other things that we've done, there's landscaping that wraps around the outside of the building, because what we're trying to do actually is, you know, we understand that there's a concern about the landscaping that's going to be lost on the site. So we brought our landscape architect on board, and we're actually trying to over landscape, so to speak, around the building, around the perimeter of the parking, to try and offset, you know, what is being given up for parking and building. So it's actually a concerted effort on the part of the credit union to try and over landscape where we can landscape the site. And I think at that point, probably turn this over for questions would be the best thing to do.
Thank you.
Are you maintaining a 24-foot center aisle between all the parking?
Mr. Chairman, yes, and in fact, at least 24 feet. If you come in the one-way access that will be from the entrance at the north end here off of Elmwood Street, as I'm going towards the building, this is 24 feet wide, 24 feet wide, 24 feet wide. Right as you get within about half dozen parking spaces of the building itself, we widen that to 34 feet to allow for a fire truck to be able to make a turning movement to leave. So it's at least 24, widened to 34 as it approaches the building.
Your northernmost, both entrances, they're both entrance and exit?
This is, at the north end, this is an entrance only and will be signed to that effect. This allows entrance and exit. The only, presumably, entrance would be for more for deliveries than for employees. The great majority of employees we expect will be coming from either northeast, west, coming from most directions. Traffic of employees would be coming from Southbridge Street, and this would be their first way into the site.
So north is entrance is in only, and the other is in and out?
Correct.
There's some on-street parking you're proposing?
No, we were at one point. We submitted the development coordinating group expressed a strong dislike for that. So we took that out, made some slight revisions to the parking. But yeah, we had an area here in front of the building. We had 4 parallel parking spaces that were removed at the, let's say, strong suggestion of the development coordinating group.
Okay. We're talking about the lighting plan now, or
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I apologize that we've turned it over for questions. I just wanted to say that one of the things I forgot to mention was that there's existing gas service, according to the folks at Eversource, about 80 feet down Preston, and we intend to extend that to Elmwood and bring it to the site for gas service, and at least a few of the abutters on the opposite side of Elmwood Street would have the opportunity to have gas service extended to them.
On the lighting diagram, can you speak to where you have the lights in the parking lot? And
oh gosh,
was there one of you?
If you can pick them out. Sure.
I'll just sort of go along here.
Sure.
Face in towards the
Are they shielded?
Yes, and they're all
The abutters?
facing down only.
down and in towards the parking.
Right.
So you've got them on both sides. If I just kind of go along the perimeter here, those are
And are you essentially 0-foot candles at the property line?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And approximately how much space is that you're including for snow storage?
We show snow storage off the end here, because there's actually one of the oddities of Southbridge Street in this area is that, see where I've got the pointer, if you're over here just a little bit south of here where the ATM is, the pavement edge of Southbridge Street is actually only about 5 feet off the right-of-way. But if you go to the middle of this site over here, the pavement edge, the curb or the gutter line of Southbridge Street is about 20 feet off the edge. Actually, excuse me, it's more like about 18 or so. But the point is that you've got actually an oddity of the state highway layout. In this area here, you've got a huge expanse of actually what's wooded here, and snow can be pushed off to that side.
On each side, how many spaces would you say you have? 7 or 8? On each side of this lot?
Just point of clarification, Mr. Brooks is looking at the area where the sewer easements are, and on the plan it shows 2 snow storage areas on each side.
Yeah. Gosh, I'm not sure. Could I ask you to rephrase that question, or I didn't quite understand.
On each side of the lot where you show the snow storage space?
Yeah.
Approximately how many spaces? You don't really designate it, designated for snow storage.
I can answer that. Yeah, the way this will work, probably make this a little simpler, is the plan for this building where we have the 40 people initially. This snow storage is actually going to take up probably about 7 or 8 spaces on each side of the lot, because we do not need all of these spaces out of the gate. And the projection for this building is
So you won't be plowing them all?
No, we wouldn't plow all of them. We'll use a portion of it as snow storage. Now, eventually, and this is a 10-year plan for this building based on what happened in the Shrewsbury facility and how long it took them to kind of max out the facility. It's a 10-year plan to get to the point where this facility would actually be filled. And at that point, we're planning on actually hauling the snow off-site, which is what happens in Shrewsbury now, because the facility is full and the credit union has a snow removal contractor who actually, he hauls off-site, and that's what would happen, you know, when we get 10 years down the road, that's what would happen.
Okay. Anything else, Matt? Okay. Scott? Jason?
I think it's more of a statement now for me. I mean, looking at this project, I mean, first of all, the building, what you've done with this lot, I absolutely love. I think the design, office space, the entryway to Auburn is the type of planning that, I'm not speaking for myself, no, I definitely want. I like that you went in for with the foliage and the greenery around here to overdo it. You know, so you're taking out a lot of green space here. To add that into it's a big question for me. Is a big positive to me. But really, I think the only thing that, you know, draws some hesitance, which are some of the comments, which is that it's just Elmwood is the only way in or out. I mean, I think without that, to me, I have no other problems with that. So that's the only thing that I'm thinking about right now, is trying to grasp the traffic flow on that level. I mean, looking at the spaces, I think half the spaces you're talking about day one doesn't seem to be a problem. I'm just trying to think and trying to get comfort with once we are fully ramped up. Really, are we pushing too much traffic on Elmwood? This is a commercial space. This is a great use for it, and we should be able to do this without having any exits on Southbridge, which I understand is probably from the fire department. Really now pushes and brings that other street back. So that's just something I'm thinking about to try to get myself comfortable with, that that's not going to be a huge issue. I think building it and operating this is no issue. It's really the traffic flow for me that I'm just trying to think of, and more information I can have on that. And I know you have, hours. It takes several hours to fill up and leave, but we know, with different, if this is ever sold, something could ever, that may change. You could change your hours. So that's something we're going to think about as we go through this. But I just wanted to make that comment now. But again, site work and design, I wish we had more of this right down Southbridge Street. I absolutely love it. I think you did a great job with it. But that's the one piece that really does hold me, give me a little caution here.
I agree. The project it's nice and coming into the town, Southbridge Street. Could you expand a little bit on? I know you alluded to Mass DOT being a bear to kind of work with, and could you kind of clarify why the decision was made to come in and off of Elmwood versus Southbridge Street?
Sure. There are a couple of factors in dealing with drainage. One which is everywhere, and one which is specific to dealing with Mass DOT. One which is a factor for any site anywhere is that you cannot send a greater peak rate of flow to an abutting property than goes there now. That's everywhere. The issue, and that's, I guess I'll start with that. That is extremely difficult to satisfy with an access onto Southbridge Street because, again, without getting too inside baseball in regard to drainage calculations, a hydrosoil group A, you have 4 levels of soil considered A, B, C, and D. A is a area where the soil is mapped is expected to be extremely permeable sands and gravels, and that's what this site is mapped as. And some of this site is exactly that. And when you have a hydrosoil group A soil and its vegetative cover, that's your pre-existing condition, that's your pre-development condition. The runoff that the official calculations will say you're getting off of that now, that you have to compare your post-development condition to, the runoff that you're getting now is almost negligible until you get to a very, very large storm. And the difficulty with that is that in that condition, you're comparing to almost zero runoff, and you have to try and match that with what is going to be, to some degree, a paved surface. And the only way to do that effectively is either with a giant detention basin, which is just not possible here, or with infiltration. And the problem is that we did, as I said, back in January of 2016, we did soil tests at several points through the site, and we had, where I'm showing here and where we're proposing infiltration, we had great soil there. We had great soil right here. When you get to the middle of the site, it was so-so, and we didn't have the same depth to seasonal high groundwater. Again, so-so, and so-so over here. In fact, we did a test off the back corner of the building just to figure out how low we were comfortable with putting the basement of the building, and that we essentially decided that there's potential groundwater there at about elevation 495. Well, if you're in the middle of the site over here, you're still in the same material, and the paved surface at the highway is elevation 497. That's only 2 feet higher. And if you're going to have catch basins picking up your water and trying to infiltrate, you don't have any depth with which to work, no way to actually pick that water up, then send it somewhere to be infiltrated, because you simply don't have any elevation to play with. So trying to come off of Southbridge Street with an access and meet the requirements for drainage, that we not send a higher peak rate of runoff to an abutting property, in this case the state highway layout, is just not possible, because we're comparing to this almost zero condition of hydrosoil group A vegetative cover in the existing condition, and to try and get almost zero in the post-development condition, you really only have 2 ways to do it. One is a giant detention basin, or infiltration where you've got some depth to play with and you've got permeable soils. And unfortunately, we really don't get until, again, we had 2 tests that showed really good permeable soils here and over about here, just a few spaces away. So we would like to have come in off Southbridge Street, but drainage-wise, it's really just a no-go. So we are sensitive and sympathetic to suggestions, why don't you come off Southbridge Street? But it's just not really possible to make it work drainage-wise. You know, the other issue, as far as Mass DOT, is everybody who's dealt with them lately, they've, over the past few years especially, have enforced this document called their Standard Operating Procedures for drainage connections. And what it says essentially is our default is that you not connect to our drainage system. And you have to prove to them that you had no other alternative but to connect to their drainage system before they will allow you to connect to their drainage system. Now, in this instance, again, we're really comparing what we need to produce for a post-development condition really has to be almost zero anyway. But they would not allow us to connect to the drainage system where we can show them that we don't have to. We can show them that, well, we could capture everything and send it to infiltration at the north end of the site. So as a further example of this whole phenomenon, at the more southerly portion of this property that Central One developed previously, we only were allowed to go forward with keeping an existing pipe when we were able to show Mass DOT a licensed site practitioner, these are the guys who do 21E studies, letter saying that they shouldn't do any infiltration, any more infiltration on this property. It's really a hard line. So again, there's 2 issues here. Just the general, you can't send a higher rate of runoff to an abutting property, and the difficulty of dealing with Mass DOT, but it's almost more the former that drives things. And again, the problem is just that there's no way to not increase the peak rate of flow to the state highway layout if we made a connection to the state highway layout. So.
One more question. Are there any proposed improvements to the Elmwood Street, that intersection where there seems to be quite a lot of, no improvement?
We don't have any proposed improvements on this plan, but we have been listening to the sentiments of the abutters at the previous meeting, and I'm sure we'll hear at this meeting. We will take that under advisement.
Well, I, like some of the others, would like to see an entrance and exit on Southbridge Street, but if you're saying it's absolutely impossible to meet the requirements of the DOT and still have the exit, then...
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I don't believe it is, and I think that if there's a peer review of these site plans, I think the peer reviewer will be able to corroborate this position.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. As the applicant and some of the abutters know already, that this project will undergo a peer review for engineering. It's already been solicited. I believe the plans may or may not have been delivered within the last couple of days to Graves Engineering. But this board is adamant to ensure the projects such as this magnitude and any other similar in nature that we've experienced in the last handful of years undergo a peer review process. So we will have another engineer reviewing this engineering to make sure that it is sound and that it meets those requirements. So that being the case, I believe the members actually asked a lot of questions I was prepared to ask too, so that was very good.
Do you have any others?
But I will also mention that, and I apologize to some of the abutters that have contacted me and provided their comments, but I just want to list some names of folks that have already reached out, so there's acknowledged that this information has been circulated to the board and as well as through our department. We received the testimonies from Judy Jazz, Sandra and James Larrabee, David and Kathleen Legg, Don Watson, and Diping Yang. With those, Mr. David Leggs submitted his own also, as well as Kathleen, and I believe we have some photos from another gentleman also. So unless I missed anything else that folks have sent me, just let me know. But we're certainly, and I don't want to speak for the chairman, we're certainly receptive to hearing your comments this evening, but the process being to hear the presentation, and then to hear your comments so we can take those under consideration while we solicit the peer review, being to continue this meeting until a future date so we can get peer review comments and take your comments under advisement and prepare answers for those. So that being said, Mr. Chairman.
Scott, anything else? Jason? Wendy? Do we have any public comment? And whoever would like to speak, would you stand and state your name and address?
My name's Frank. I live at 17 Newton Street, right here. 28 years I lived here.
Frank, sorry to interrupt. Can you please stay at the microphone so we can get it on the folks at home that are watching a TV, as well as can you please tell us your last name for the record?
Frankie Knowlton, 17 Newton Street, Auburn, Mass.
Thank you, sir.
I'm living here for 28 years now, and I own my house, and I don't have a problem with them building and all that. That's fine, great. But it's the exits, you know? They're gonna have to go to the DOT or something and work something out with them, have it exit Southbridge Street. That's the problem I have. It's a nice, quiet neighborhood. There's kids on bikes, safety issue too, you know? So I'm all for it, but if they can't get the exits on Southbridge Street, have them buy another piece of property and build a building elsewhere. I mean, they get all the money, the banks, you know? So they're not broke. I live there. You know, I don't need that traffic coming down Jerome Ave over there. All night, the kids on their bikes, it's wrong. So, have them go to the state, the Department of Transportation, and have them fix it, their problem. Otherwise, they'll go buy another building. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Yes, ma'am. Jude?
Maureen DuBois, 15 and 19 Southbridge Street. We had met with the bank. One of the issues that we were concerned about was that entrance as you come in on Elmwood Street. That's a very dangerous corner. I actually one of the residents did put in a public request for the accident numbers. I don't believe for 1 minute that 3 accidents in 3 years is accurate. I can personally tell you of 3 cars that were pulled out of the ditch across the street. One of the things that I have been trying to work with this town for a number of years is that the speed limit was changed from 30 miles an hour up to 40 miles an hour in that stretch from roughly where their bank is now to the Worcester line. It used to be 30 miles an hour. The other thing they did was used to be a solid double yellow line, which didn't allow passing. They then changed that to a broken yellow line. We now have in excess, and I have met at length with the incoming Vice President of Real Estate for Polar, as well as their traffic person. They're trying to get me some numbers. I don't think this town has a clear understanding of the volume of trucks and traffic that go in and out of that Polar complex. I spoke to one of the people at Polar when they were trying to move their exit up and back so they could cut through from Walcott across Tracy Place. And he had said to me that they were trying to take 200 trucks a day away from in front of me. That's just for Polar. So when I met with them, they said they have trailer trucks that come in, load up, and go out. They have box trucks that load up and go out. They also have a high volume of trucks that just go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth all day. They take the product from Walcott Street and they bring it over to the warehouse. You have Atlas in there, you have Omni in there, you have the mechanical company in there, you have Reliant in there. I don't think anybody realizes the volume of trailer truck traffic. I discussed at length a number of issues with Polar, and I have to say for the first time, they were very receptive. You have trucks, box trucks, trailer trucks, going up Elmwood, up Jerome Ave, up and down both of those streets. They did put a weight capacity on Jerome Ave, but there's not one on Elmwood Street. Some of those trucks have to go up there because they have businesses that they deliver to, but I don't believe any 18-wheeler should be going up and down any of those streets. There's no posted speed limit from my house all the way down to Coney Island. There used to be one coming back down at the grid, but that was taken out by an accident. There is little to no enforcement with speed limit. We have serious issues with trucks trying to enter and exit through their entrance. They have to pull way over in order to make the loop to get in. I mean, this, if you're gonna add another 40 to 100 cars, they're basically coming head-on with 200 to 300 trailer trucks and other trucks. When people come flying down Elmwood Street, they're looking to the left, and they blow that stop sign every time. This past storm, if you had driven up Elmwood Street, the plowing was horrendous. You couldn't even get up and down that street in a regular pickup truck with a plow on it. There's just too much that needs to be done. And I have asked and asked for everybody to climb on board, including this town. If you don't get that traffic under control right there now, then you're going from bad to worse. You can't keep adding that volume of traffic in where the road bottlenecks and then have them swing around and come into a section where you have 3 streets all coming together. You have Preston, you have Willis, and you have Elmwood and Southbridge. There are a number of accidents. Not all of them involve the police department. There's many a times the accidents occur, they pull over in front of my yard, they swap their information, and off they go. And there's also near misses that when my kids were little, they'd have it down to a science. Whoops, oh, that's a miss. Oops, oh, that's a hit. And they'd get up and they'd go run to see what was going on. I've had my mailbox almost taken out because these trailer trucks are so big that you can't see beyond them. And because they're allowed to pass, when those trucks are pulling in and out of that driveway, the people behind them get impatient. And they shoot out from behind them, and they don't realize the road is so narrow that there have been a countless number of near head-on collisions. A minivan flipped over there. I mean, I really find the 3 in 3 years very hard to believe. I mean, I witness it daily. It's just, something needs to be done, and the town needs to get on board, and they need to, if this is gonna go through, you need to get that traffic under control in that stretch from the Worcester line out to where Central 1 currently stands. If you don't do that, it's a recipe for disaster, and there will be a death. I came to the selectmen once before, and I said, those trailer trucks are so long, one of them's gonna get hit by a train. Sure enough, truck got hit by a train. Because it was trying to pull out, the truck was too long, along came the train, hit the truck. POLA is aware of a number of the things that need to be done. They have driver conduct problems, and like I said, they were very good to me. Central 1 has been more than helpful in wanting to listen to the concerns, but that lower entrance, that's just not gonna, somebody's gonna wind up seriously hurt. But this town needs to go to the DOT, and you need to get that traffic under control. The other thing you need to keep in mind is the old Anderson building down at Hope Ave. That was
Mrs. Breeze, but we can't discuss the Anderson building.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is you're still talking the volume of traffic that's still coming in that stretch.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Sharon Yang from 55 Elmwood Street, and I thank you, Matt, for talking about the presentation I sent in. I also want to piggyback on what Maureen was saying about the traffic. I can't emphasize enough how important this is. I'm the one who put in the request for a traffic report, and December 29th, and I haven't received it yet. But I didn't just request for Southbridge and Elmwood, because we already have people taking shortcuts all over the place. Hampton, coming up Hampton off Southbridge, Hampton onto Elmwood, and where we've had accidents, we've had, I put it in for Hampton and Southbridge, Hampton and Elmwood, Preston, Willis, Field, and Elmwood as well, and up to Packagug, because we're going to have a lot of traffic. We have 100 people coming to work, and even if you stagger it over 2 hours, that's 50 cars. That's 50 cars coming at us. We have speed problems. We have accidents in all. Jerome is another area where people are coming in, and there are problems. So the report that they have is limited to one place. It's also based on the traffic we have now. It's not based on having up to 100 cars coming in. And I agree with Maureen. Somebody's going to get hurt, someone's going to get killed. I mean, yes, it's costing these people money. I'm sorry, they have my sympathy. But A, it's costing us money because if we get into an accident, there goes our car, there goes our form of transportation. It's going to be hard for us to get to work. We have to get to work too. Property values, I'm going to go down the drain, because who wants to live, you have children, you don't want to live on a street where there's that much traffic. You want a nice residential home, you don't want to move on a street where there's, you know, all this mishigas going on. But it's our lives too. You know, it's their money, but it's our lives. We're going to get hurt. We're going to get killed. And you know, I just can't help thinking that, you know, the residents have rights too, and we should be protected. You can't forget that, yes, that plot is highway business, but the whole street on the other side and part abutting them is also residential. So residential rights count on that street as well. And we rely on you to protect us and to keep us safe. And so I just want you to keep that in mind. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, please state your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Victor Bowen, and I'm a resident of 25 Elmwood Street. Which is right in, which I like to call ground zero, because we're being affected by not only the building, but also the entrance and exit, as well as the parking lot. So my main concern is with the entrance and the exit. That area of Elmwood is extremely narrow. When it snows, it gets even narrower. And currently what the town does for snow removal, they push to widen the street, they push the snow up into the area where the proposed construction site is. So my question would be, what are you going to do? What's the town going to do with the snow removal once the building goes up? Are you going to have to close down sections of the street to remove the snow? How's that all going to work? Again, the street is extremely narrow, and someone mentioned that fire engines will be able to pull in and out of there. I don't know how wide that driveway is going to be, but I think it would need to be extremely wide to avoid vehicles turning onto Elmwood, going up onto my lot or the people that live at 29. So I think you really need to look at, again, getting the entrances and exits on Southbridge somehow, because Elmwood, while the building that you're putting up and everything else is commercial, Elmwood is a residential street, and it's too narrow. I mean, unless the town wants to widen the street, then fine. Thank you.
How wide, how deep is the highway business zone?
The other side of Elmwood Street is the residential.
Oh, it goes right to residential. Yeah. We want to make sure we have the peer review look at the width of the road. We're going to make sure that in the peer review that we have them check the width of the road. and the right-of-way width of that road?
Through the chair, even furthermore, you mentioned the emergency vehicles, and that's certainly examined as well. They need to make sure that the largest fire truck in Auburn can make the corner in and out of the site. So it's customary for that to be reviewed as part of the peer review.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Kathleen Legg. I live at 33 Field Street, which is, I'll point out, up the hill on Preston, and then we live over that way. But we own a piece of land here. So we are back to back with this. So I'm very, first I want to say thank you to all of you for doing all this work. I know most of you are just volunteer, and that's a lot of work. And I think planning about everything is really important. So I'm very grateful that you do this work. And I'm also really glad to hear that you're going to check about the fire department and the largest vehicles, because it's my understanding that the fire truck can't make that corner. And I live in that neighborhood, so it's something that's important to me. I don't think the buses can do that corner either. So there's going to be 100 people working in that building, and the fire truck can't go the fastest way to get there because it can't do that corner. So I'm glad you're going to check that out. I'm concerned, like everybody, that there's going to be 200 more cars, 100 twice a day in that neighborhood. And it will be staggered, which means it's going to be going on all day, 6 days a week. It's a walking neighborhood now, and there are no sidewalks, by and large. The bank already has access to Southbridge Street. They have 3 curb cuts, and they have a great deal of space dedicated to their ATM. And I think if they reconfigured their plan, and the rest of the bank isn't on what they're showing you, if they reconfigured it, I think that they could come up with a much better plan for, probably for the bank, but certainly for the residents and for the town. The building is very pretty, and I like that they're going to have some trees, but I wouldn't call it over-landscaped by any stretch. If they wanted to over-landscape, they could have their 66 parking spaces and put their exit on the other side of the building and go out the other way where the ATM is, and still keep their drainage where it is. Anyway, thank you again for all your work, and I appreciate your attention to this matter.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Writing all this stuff down,
Mr. Chair and fellow citizens and folks from the credit union and the rest of the board, I want to thank you for your consideration on this. And my name is David Legg. I live at 33 Field Street, and you know where that is because my wife just did a nice job of telling you. We've lived there for 30 years. We built our own home. And we've seen through that time period that this is a wonderful neighborhood to live in because it's got incredible access, but it's also a place of refuge. Because as soon as you drive into our neighborhood, you come by a nice screen of mature trees and a lovely 1780s colonial. To many of you, you see this as a gateway community and a wonderful opportunity for business. The gateway is an important aspect of the lifeblood of our community, that we have access. But when we get to our homes need to be a refuge. And so much of what makes our homes and even our businesses to some degree a refuge, is in many cases when you look around this town, even beside many of the large commercial properties, you have stands and strands of mature trees. When you looked earlier tonight at aerial views that were shown to us by Mr. Benoit of some of these neighborhood areas, lots of trees. Here in this project, there doesn't seem to be any effort to retain the existing trees, and that's going to make a real difference for those of us who are uphill. You know, Packagug Hill, Elmwood area is fairly steep. Those of us that are the very next tier up, which would be Field Street, we're going to see directly over that little landscape screen right at the lights on Southbridge Street and right at these 120 parking spaces, when you count the parking spaces that the credit union already has. Not to mention the circle for the ATM. The pavement circle for that ATM, which is not shown on this plan, but is shown on the illustrations that I sent you, is 200 feet in circumference. Again, I think there are many things about this project that are lovely, but when we start to think about the scale, the asphalt, and the edifice, as I've looked at this project more and more through the weeks and made multiple trips here when I could, because it seemed to always be those Monday nights just didn't line up right with New Year's and Christmas. It's kind of hard to wrap our arms around this project. On Southbridge Street, the rear of the building will tower 39 feet higher than Southbridge Street. We have zoning bylaws that indicate normally the height of the building would be 25 feet. This is out of scale. It's going to be within 20 feet of Southbridge Street. It is going to tower over that section. It's not consistent with the other commercial buildings that we have in town. It is beautiful, but it is squished, and it is going to be foreboding in that way. Another thing that we have in those zoning bylaws, and I'm sure you're all far more familiar with them than I am, and I know that you're doing many things to help to improve this town and doing forward-looking, but we also have provisions that call for reduction of entrance and egress onto roads to make use of existing driveways where possible. There are 3 curb cuts now where they easily could have 2, therefore sparing another one for the Southbridge side. And perhaps there might be some provisions under which the state can consider the safety elements and might be a little bit more amenable to having a little bit of that water come in to help to keep this community both a refuge and a gateway. I want to say one final thing about congestion. The beauty for me of living in Auburn is that it is a town where when I first moved into town, I lived in the town and I worked in the town. That's a rarity. This is a wonderful town for people to live in and to be easily able to get somewhere else to get to work. It's also a wonderful town to work in because it's not hard to get into our town because we've got wonderful highway access. It's also a great place to come and shop. That means a lot of people passing through on a regular basis. In many ways, it's like a piece of Swiss cheese. That access, that refuge, those are the heart and soul of our town. I work in Framingham. When I commute to Framingham in the morning, it takes me 20 minutes to get from my driveway to the Framingham exit off the Mass Pike. And I must admit, I'm probably going 71 miles an hour to do that. It then takes me 21 minutes to get to my office, which is in downtown Framingham. But it is not at the center or south of the center, wherein it would take me half an hour. Framingham is a community that has much closer access to Boston than we do, but they have congestion problems that are serious. Those are not the kind of problems that we would be able to address nearly as well, because we do not have the proximity to Boston that they do. And as I pass through many of these neighborhoods where there's lots of congestion, there's a lot of sidewalks. Those things are expensive. I think it would be much better if in this project, it could perhaps be scaled back rather than having that storage. Have that edifice that high in order to have storage in the basement. Perhaps some compassion from the credit union. And I certainly know that many of your members are National Grid folks, just like I am. I signed up to be a member of that credit union that I love in the Northborough office of National Grid when I worked there. They have a significant emphasis on safety. Those folks are right down the street. Many of your branches are located in places where National Grid has had its offices, and your third branch is directly inside that Northborough office. So I've probably taken more time, but again, I want to emphasize, please be forward-thinking about how this project is going to be consistent with the values that are reflected in your carefully thought-out bylaws. In effect, this project is only sitting before us because of a loophole in the bylaws. Then, in essence, this building has two fronts, 25 feet at the front. Normally, you're going to think that back is kind of tucked downhill into the woods. It's not. It's going to be right in our face. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Matt, you want to talk to the head of the building?
Sure. Actually, Mr. Chairman, if I could direct some of the abutters' concerns through the chair to the applicant. I just want to repeat a couple, and maybe you guys might want to address some of these. And thank you, everyone, for your comments. It's very helpful for myself, as well as the board. And I'm sure some of you want to speak also. But in the interest of time, let's make sure that there are new things we haven't come up with yet. We've heard a lot about traffic already, so I think that's something we've covered. So if there's anything we haven't and you want to speak, I'm sure you'll be called on shortly. But I just want to talk about one thing. Has Central One explored the feasibility of using a pre-existing egress where the ATM is located?
Through you, Mr. Chair. This project site is a separate legal lot. It is not in any way part of the existing lot where the branch location is. And as such, again, because it's a separate lot, that is not proposed.
Okay. And even so, there is portions of our bylaw where common driveways are possible. And even if they are separate, it's not something that's uncommon.
Excuse me. And Mr. Chairman, because of the very odd nature of this parcel of land, where we're really required to push the building into the far south end of it, and the building, the ATM is the grade of the driveway there is at about elevation 498. In front of the building is elevation 509. This is 11 feet higher, just 40, 50 feet away. There's just no reasonable way to do driveway access there. You'd also have an extremely odd driveway connection running immediately adjacent to, in front of, or behind the building itself. So I sympathize with the suggestion that maybe it could have been done using the existing access that is off Southbridge Street that is used for the ATM, but it just does not allow a reasonable connection.
Sure. Thank you. Another question through the chair. Mention of retaining existing trees along Elmwood Street. I see a comprehensive landscape proposal, which is excellent. I just didn't know if any of those proposed to retain existing in any capacity.
There are, again, as this is colored, what you see here is I think is a fair representation. And what you've got, I'm going to try and be very precise here with the pointer. Where I've got the pointer right now is at the curb line of Elmwood Street. There's also, you see some white space there on this plan as it's colored before you get to the green of the expected landscaping. Some of that is our existing trees off of the curb line of Elmwood Street, within the right-of-way of Elmwood Street, that are to remain. We haven't specified exactly locations, that there's a 12-inch maple here, there's a 6-inch oak sapling here, etc. But there are trees to remain alongside Elmwood Street.
Okay, thank you. Another question. Measuring the height. Now, I know I can answer one of these, and according to Auburn zoning bylaws, the height is measured from the ground level of the front of the building, and the front of this building is facing Elmwood Street to the
Height of the...
to the highest point of the highest floor, so the ceiling of the highest floor. And I believe your proposal calls for it's 25 feet, I believe.
Correct.
If not slightly less.
We're just under the 25 feet, actually.
Yeah. And as Mr. Leggett pointed out, from Southbridge Street, you're looking at something that's 39-ish or something. According to Auburn bylaws, which is all we can enforce, this is not a common scenario that I'm sure anyone ran into when they decided to write these bylaws, whenever that was. So our task is to enforce what we have in front of us. If this prompts a bylaw revision in the future, perhaps it does. But all we can do is review the height based on how our bylaws are written and the International Building Code as well. So I just wanted to lay that one out there. I came up with another question on my own, kind of through the abutters discussions, and it's kind of regarding lighting. But light poles, did we mention how tall these light poles would be? I know that, so they're going to have shields on them. But I'm just curious about their height.
I believe, excuse me, Matt, I believe it's 20 feet is proposed, as indicated on the lighting plan.
Okay. Has any thought been put towards like low-level lighting that's like almost ground level, circular with lights that come out?
We haven't specifically looked at it, but we'd certainly be willing to consider it if, again, if that's a specific point of emphasis to try and decrease as much as possible.
Sure. I'm thinking for the parking area because the building might need some, at least lights coming off the building for security reasons. I completely understand that. I'm just thinking as far as the parking lot itself might be able to take advantage of some 4-foot poles with lights around them so that are just shorter so that, no matter what foot candles say with zero lot line, you can see them from anywhere. So especially when they're that tall. But tall enough to not get buried in snowbanks, of course. So those are a handful of things that I wanted to at least have you guys respond to. Is there anything else that the abutters brought up? Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. Is there anything else the abutters brought up that you guys intended to respond to this evening, or perhaps at a future meeting?
I think we're taking input from the abutters and the board, and we'll, again, from the peer review, and we'll refine the design based on all of this.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Okay, is there any other public comment? Gentlemen.
My name is Jeffrey Jazz, and I live at Willis Street, number 5. I just wanted to mention, as I did before, that I'm all for the building. I think these gentlemen have put a lot of hard work into it, and they're doing the best they can. It's clear as day to me that they are. However, due to my location and how it would affect me, I'm concerned about people shortcutting, using Willis Street. I personally went out to Willis Street yesterday with a tape measure and measured snowbank to snowbank, and it was about 12 feet. It's not very wide. During the summer, when there is no snow or inclement weather, there's still no sidewalks on that street. Children, elderly, pets, the usual. So that's my concern. One more thing I would like to mention. In terms of the Southbridge and Elmwood, that sharp turn there, this gentleman mentioned a statistic. There's only been 3 accidents. Those are reported. I personally, myself, have had an accident there. It was never reported. We exchanged information and moved on our way. So it's much more hazardous than the stats appear or show. And I would like to have the board take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Frankie Knowlton, 17 Newton Street, Auburn, Mass. Mr. Chairman, what goes on next? Like, how's this work? We've never been through this, so, what goes on next?
Well, we presented all the information tonight. We'll listen to the public comment, the comment of the board, and then we will ask for peer review, probably a traffic study and some other things, and then they'll incorporate that in. We'll have it reviewed by our own people, and then we'll come back and they'll work with their applicant people and their engineers and stuff like that, and we'll try to get it together to where we think it's the best situation that we can have. And And then it's up to the vote of the board as to whether or not it gets approved.
Okay, and you guys are the board?
Yes.
6 people?
5.
5? Okay, that's... All right, even though we don't want them exits all there, right, you're gonna vote on that?
It'll be all part of the project.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Jen Thanis. We live at 33 Elmwood Street, which is directly right to the side of this entire plan. My house looks directly into the existing ATM, and I have some concerns about the landscaping. I know we can honestly talk about the traffic and issues among the driving probably all night long. But in terms of the landscaping, I'd be interested to see how much this is actually going to shield from the street. When the ATM was completed, all of the trees across the street from our home were eliminated. I now look into an ATM light. I now hear the trains much louder than before. We hear every truck from Polar, Atlas, like they're in our backyard. And to consistently see that more and more landscaping is being eliminated, and potentially we're still not sure exactly what this would be, I'm very concerned about that in terms of the quality of life of living at our home. Another thing that I'd like to address, and one of the things brought up before, was the fact that they were expecting the majority of the people to come and go from Southbridge Street potentially to 290. I don't know if that's necessarily true. The reason for that is I'm not originally from Auburn. I'm not originally from Massachusetts. It took me about 2 weeks about living at our home to realize that the cut through to Elmwood Street gets to Route 20, it gets to 146, it gets to 90. I work in Boston. I take Elmwood Street all the time, back and forth. To cut throughs, there's enough traffic behind the streets that has nothing to do with this proposed project. So I would say that looking at the traffic patterns would be something to look into more in depth. As a final, I'm also concerned about the security of the lot after hours. I don't know if necessarily anyone has thought about if the parking lot would be blocked after hours. It could be a spot for people to park. It could be for underage people to come there, potentially illegal activities. You never know. People are always looking for an open parking lot for different things. Not to say it wouldn't be nice to eventually have some extra parking around our homes, because Elmwood Street is so small now. When we do have get-togethers, there's nowhere for our families and friends to park. So to add a bunch more cars would be a lot. But I'd like to thank the board and also all the neighbors for coming together and really putting together an action plan, because this is something that is going to deeply affect our quality of life, our value of our homes, and the way we're going to be able to go to and from our homes every single day. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is Diping Yang. I live at 55 Elmwood. I just want to say one thing. This land, 20 and 30 Elmwood Street, is zoned for highway business because it's abutting Route 20. Otherwise, it wouldn't be. And since it's zoned for highway business, let's confine it to the highway, not to Elmwood Street. I just want to say this, highway business zoned.
I would like to say that to the point that he brought up, in the past and the time that I've been on the board, we do like to see where we can, when it's highway business, that the entrances are at least partially on those streets and not just into the residential neighborhoods. So if you can, I know what you said, we all listened to you, but if you can see if there's any kind of an effort you can make, or anything you can do with the Mass DOT to maybe be able to affect an exit on Southbridge Street, that would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. I don't think there's too many.
Thank you. My name is Dave Legg, 33 Field Street. Just a follow-on on the curb cuts aspects. When looking a little bit closer at the plans, and some of you have perhaps a cross-section in the letter that I sent, it will show you that in the vicinity of the ATM on that side of the branch are 2 curb cuts. I was not in any way suggesting necessarily that the curb cut, one of those be shared, but rather those be combined. The way they are on the plan is not exactly the way they are in the street. There's a telephone pole in the way. So they already have been kind of brought together a little closer. And it does seem to me, certainly there could be an opportunity to move the ATM closer to the bank, Greenwood Street in Worcester, Webster Credit Union headquarters for 250 employees, a branch adjacent, and they've got an ATM, and they're getting by just fine with 3 curb cuts, 1 in, 1 out, and a double for entrance. So I would encourage people to think about what might be done to perhaps make this plan work with fewer parking spaces north of the new building, and some of those perhaps where the ATM, then maybe being able to find some way to work some magic for a driveway partway out Southbridge Street. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the audience? There being none, Scott?
Nothing at this time.
Jason? All set. Wendy? I think we should ask and request also for a traffic study.
Agreed.
Any members opposed to that?
No.
So,
anything else from you?
No, I just want to reflect that. So we understand that a peer review is taking place. Though it sounds like the board members would like to request a traffic study. So information, traffic provided by the applicant, potentially peer reviewed by a consultant once provided. And any response that you can prepare to comments this evening from abutters for the next meeting, of course, and okay, as applicable, of course. And Mr. Chairman, I just want to recommend, and Central One may have done this already, but any contact with Mass DOT regarding new curb cuts or some of the soil stuff that you already mentioned earlier. If you had any correspondence from them that you could share, that might be helpful also, if available. So that might put to bed some of the questions and concerns about that stuff, if there's response from their behalf. But that's just my opinion. Otherwise, Mr. Chairman, I think this is a great first meeting. Some great feedback from the abutters, and I can't thank you enough. It's obviously a late night in the bigger room for all of us. So,
one more.
Thanks very much for your time.
Mrs. Dubois, do you have something you can say, kind of?
Traffic study. Exactly where are you going to be counting these vehicles? Is it going to be Southbridge Street? Is it going to be in front of Polar?
It'll be the side
Elmwood
streets,
Street?
Hampton, Elmwood.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I think it's most important that you're looking at the areas affected that are surrounding the site. So anything that abuts the property.
Jerome Ave, Field Street, leading up to...
Mr. Chairman, Jerome Ave doesn't abut this property. So we're just looking at Elmwood Street, Willis, Preston, and Southbridge.
Jerome.
Will that include?
That's a feeder. That's a feeder.
Yes. Will that include the entrance and exit to the Polar Atlas complex?
Yeah, they'll look at all of that. They'll probably start the Southbridge Street from Lewis to Line or something like that.
Okay.
See what traffic comes through
Turning
there.
movements. The turning movements will be included.
And all the turning movements and stuff like that.
Through the chair to the applicant, I believe the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission may have done some traffic counts recently in this area. You may be able to extract some data from their database.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, as Matt says, the traffic engineers, and I am not one, who prepare these reports usually have an idea of the network of available materials and counts, as Matt says, that have been done by CMRPC and other folks.
That's all I have. Continuance date would be either the 23rd or February 13th, depending on the applicant.
What would you like, January 23rd or February 13th?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the dates again?
January 23rd or February 13th.
If you could give us one more, February. To give peer review enough time, probably February makes the most sense. I think in the interest of giving peer review more time, we'll take the February meeting.
Make a motion to continue the hearing to February 13th.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, it is a vote. Thank you for your time, thank you for coming and your comments.
Okay, I just want to ask folks that we still have a meeting and a handful of things to accomplish, so don't have a completed wall over here, so the second you step out of this room, we're going to be able to hear you very well. So if you wish to converse, please make sure you go through the double doors on your way out. Thank you.
That's the last hearing. We did plan revision.
So,
You got anything under associate member?
That's what we had hoped for.
yeah.
Content.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, it's just to let the folks know that we are looking for an associate member, and any vacancy can be applied for through the town manager's office. And the board has one more responsibility, just to vote to endorse the plan for the Ashworth Hill subdivision, following the covenant that we signed earlier.
Make the motion to sign
To endorse the plan.
endorse the plan for the Ashworth development.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded. It's motioned and seconded.
Who's the second? All those in favor?
Aye.
There's a vote.
Thank you.
Okay, how do you want to do this, man? Should we go in the other room?
You can adjourn if you want, and we can just sign this.
Use it on the big table.
That's better on that big
Big
table.
table, yeah.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.